We're experimenting with some new speaker, and there's a possibility there might be a slight echo. But I think we're still trying to figure it out, so hopefully it will be not bad. Okay, I think we're ready to start. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanao Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So I hope you got my email. And what I indicated there was that for a little while longer, I'll continue to focus on certain concepts that will be helpful to us, and then start to relate it to Bhagavad Gita slowly. So I'm not sure how many more will be, but I think I want to continue with some ways of describing what the Vedantic message is. And this comes from, I think, one advantage that I find you should all find in me is that I'm also a householder like you. And so think what I teach to you also apply to me. And so it isn't as though I'm all done and then I'm just going to. It's not like that. I may be a couple of steps ahead of you, I don't know. But at least all the concepts that I teach should apply to me also. And so I see how they apply to me and then communicate that with you. So in that sense, I think there were some concepts that have really changed my behavior and my thinking. And those are the ones that I want to communicate to you as we go into the understanding of the Vedanta. So today I want to focus on one aspect of the life which permeates the teaching of the Bhagavad Gita. And it took a little while for me to grasp it, and so whatever I have learned, I want to now communicate to you as a kind of like a single concept, and we will relate it back to the other concepts that we've done before. So it's not as though we will not revisit. It all is a composite, but today's will be a new concept that I want to really talk about. Okay. So the way I want to talk about that is a operation which is running as a business, a successful business being run. And I gave an example that suppose there is because reminds me of the session that I went to at Kerala Ayurveda. That's why it is fresh in my mind. Suppose there is a person who has discovered certain herbal remedies, which is really the case. The people who started Kerala Ayurveda, they studied some of the science of getting some of the herbs from the various tree barks and so on and so forth. And now it's become a big business. So it's very relevant to what this is. So suppose you have a doctor who creates these medicines. Then he says that I think I should help the community by opening up a shop. And it became so successful that he had many shops. He has a big business. And he hires some help and he starts to run the business. Okay? Well, now in this setup, we have three entities. We have an owner, we have a trustee, and we have other workers. Owner is obvious. A trustee could be one who is responsible. And so for example, these are the people who run the financial aspect, who collects the money. The owner may not be there all the time, but somebody that he trusts that can do a good job of running the show, of collecting money, is honest, and so on. So that's who I would call a trustee. And then you have workers that you get to uncreate, create, lots of other people, and so on and so forth. So there are three classes of entities that run this business: owner, trustee, and a worker. Okay? Now let us see how the three of them differ from each other. Okay? So, owner, this is an important thing to see, is the one who created the idea. And in this example, himself. His doctor, he's the one that, and this happens all the time. You have people who just come up with an idea and they start it. So the characteristic of what I would call a owner is the creator of the idea. This definition does not apply to either the trustee or the worker. They did not create the idea. They were recruited. Their relationship was given to them. Okay, all this will become relevant in our life, but I just want to define the different roles in this. And then you have, and also the trustee now has been given some significant roles in running the business. And then you have the worker who is given some instructions and he's paid some wages. He's supposed to be on time. He's supposed to do a good job, all of that. So these are the three different ways of running the business. Let's go on. The owner is the one that also, in addition to creating the business, also dispenses the wages and rewards. Okay? How much to pay for the people, how many different, that as the business gets more complex, how much to reward number one, number two, etc. So he is the one who really decides what the structure is of the rewards. Then we have the trustee. So the trustee is the one who goes over and beyond his normal work hours. And by the way, all of this is from not this I want to let you know, and I'm going to do this very often. All of this is not my idea. This is an idea that I borrow when something strikes me, And this is all given in our Shastras. Okay, so don't think of it as just like my creation or no. All I'm doing is just putting it in the context so that it becomes clear to you. That's it. Okay? So I remember this one example. This we will go into in more detail later on. But I saw this example. There is a teacher, Swami Maheshanandji, who's a Hindi speaker and a Hindi language. And I have learned so much from him for the last 7-8 years. I've read so many of his books. I really respect he's almost like my double teacher. Swami Dayanandji, of course, was the one who was my teacher. And Swami Maheshanand also has become a very significant contributor to my understanding. So in that, he was discussing this in one class, one book. He was saying that supposing there is a owner of a shop, and he was talking about some clothing business, but doesn't matter whether it's Ayurvedic or whatever. So he near the Diwali time, there is a lot of business that people buy new clothes, new jewelry, and so on. Just like here near Christmas also, you have so much business. So he calls his people up and he says, today I think we need to work until 9 o'clock at night. Because normally the shop closes at 6 o'clock. So the trustees were saying, okay, sir, no problems. I'll call my wife and tell him I'm going to be late. And this hired worker said, I can't wait. I can't wait because I've got my family and they're expecting me and so on and so forth. So I cannot do. And it is not an overtime. It's just like asking people, can you do something extra? And so this guy refuses. This fellow says, okay, I will do it. And this happens quite often. So now, this is a very important thing. I want to mention this a little bit later on. I'll complete the analysis. At this point of asking for extra help, the owner does not give them immediate rewards. It's not as though you worked until 9 o'clock. That's why I said this is not an overtime kind of a situation. They don't have any overtime system. You just give rewards, maybe an increment at the end of the year, but at that point nothing was given. And so keep that in mind. This is an important thing to see. Anyway, so this is the next point. Next one, and this is second point of it, the owner, so this is the owner column, rewards thoughtfully. Because he needs the people to really get the business. So it's not as though it is arbitrary and wrong or nothing like that. They've got a system and it rewards thoughtfully. So this is important too, as we see in our life. Now, the attitude of the trustee expects rewards, but has a lot of trust with the owner. He says that the owner is a fair guy, fair person. And if things go wrong, there must be a reason for it. And the owner will make it okay, and I'll talk to him. But I think generally speaking, he has a certain degree of trust and therefore not a lot of problems in the way he thinks of it. In the case of the worker, it is very self-centric. Self-centric in the sense that he was hired to do a job and his interests is in fulfilling the expectations of the job, in keeping the job, And he counts the money and he thinks about his wife and his children and so on and so forth. That is the main focus. It is not the focus of the business. The trustee's focus is partially to the business and partially to about himself. The owner's focus is all to the business. Okay? So in terms of the attitude, this should also be considered. Now comes the next point. This is an important point that we're going to build on. Let us start with the owner. The shop, the business is his life. He worries about it day and night. At night, also he thinks about it. He wakes up in the middle of the night. My God, am I doing the right things? I have bills to pay. Where are they going to come from? All of that. This is a 24-hour, not even a job, this is a 24-hour life from him. Where his life begins, where it doesn't, there's no boundaries. It's all one and the same. That is not the case with the trustee or the worker. So let's take the trustee for a minute. In the case of the trustee, he is very worried about the business from 8 to 5, or from extended hours if it needs to be. He does his job very well and worries about it, makes phone calls that the shipment has not arrived, where's the truck, all of that he does. He worries about it. Once he goes home, he has another life. He doesn't wake up in the middle of the night to worry about how is the business running, what is happening. He is at ease. As far as he's got worries from his own home, that's a separate thing, but not about the business from outside. In the case of the worker, he probably does not even worry during the day. Forget about the night. He is much more concerned about his own life and so on. And he does his job. It's not as though he's a cheat or anything like this. But the main thing is he's not really that worried about any time and so on. Okay, let's go on. The owner feels totally responsible. Yeah, obviously, in terms of how we have arrived at this, totally responsible for how the business is running. The trustee loves the job. He is committed on a long-term basis with the owner and partially gets attached to it. He may not worry about it at night time, but if he goes on vacation, he is still thinking about the job. He writes to the owner, how are things running? And he's attached to it. He doesn't have any alternative pardon me, he doesn't have any alternative jobs that he's seeking. He's happy with it, and to a certain extent he gets attached to it. Attached in the sense that he knows that the business has been good to him and to his family, and he's dependent on it. In the case of the worker, he may love the job, he may not love the job, but he is very concerned about getting his wages. And to that extent he's attached. So his attachment, so this is an important thing as we will look into that. His attachment is rather selfish. It is not an attachment for the business to run. It's to make sure that he still has a job. And he's the one probably who's looking around in case this job does not continue. He has some other alternatives. In other words, his focus is very self-centered in that sense. Okay? We're almost to the end of this, and then we will apply that to our lives. So this is a kind of like a summation of all of this. So what we say is that the owner is what is called a karma phaladata. Karma phaladata. Karma phaladata means the one who dispenses the wages and rewards, who decides how much to give, when to give, what to give. Okay. And we can now pause at this point and make a point which I was going to make earlier, but I wanted to come to this point. Swami Maheshananji gives a very beautiful example that was very graphic to me. He said that suppose you have a rubber ball that you are throwing against the wall. What happens is that the ball comes back relatively in a very predictable fashion. Okay? There may be some changes, it really depends upon your own throwing. If you're throwing too fast, then it will come back very fast. If you're throwing slowly, like that. But really speaking, the wall simply reflects your action. And there's no mystery about it. Okay? So what that means is that the karma phaladata, in this case the reward giver, is non-sentient. It is inert. The wall is inert. It doesn't think about, should I give this back to him now, or should I wait for a while? Should I make it into a curveball or a fastball, as the baseball things are going on in that analogy? No, whatever you throw it, it comes back in the same way. It doesn't introduce any kind of unpredictability to it. The reverse is also true. If you are a conscious entity, it is not necessary that you will act like a wall. You may return right away. As it, sometimes it happens. Just an imagery that supposing, and I see this because my younger granddaughter is playing softball, and so my son and they do a lot of practicing back and forth and so on and so forth, to get her ready for games. And if she throws, supposing she throws a ball for my son, and he immediately returns it. But supposing he gets a phone call, and my granddaughter sends a ball to him, and he doesn't return it right away, because he's got some valid reason, something else come up, he's got to get on the phone. These days you cannot separate business from your home. This is the thing, 24 hours. That was so different from my days. But nowadays, you cannot say, what time did you come back from office? What is office, what is home is all the same. And so the fellow gets a phone call, and my granddaughter is waiting. He says, Dad, he says, wait, I've got something else going on. Then after he's done with it, he throws it back. You know what that means? He's not a wall. He's a conscious person. So please remember this as we draw the examples in our life. The owner is a conscious person. As a karma phala data, he is not an inert wall. As we expect him to be, this is the thing that will happen. We'll just discuss some of the implications of all this. All right, so this is as far as the owner's role in the giving of the results is concerned. Now let us look at the role of the worker and the trustee. The role, and I'm exaggerating all this. It's not as though these are such hard and fast kind of things. You get the picture. I'm just giving you a kind of like an overall sense of it. So the worker is not a karma yogi. He is a karmi. Karmi in the sense that you do some actions and you expect the results. That's it. Very simple. Very simple. There's nothing else, nothing more. And with it comes all of the disappointments, pleasures. If you get what you want, you're happy. If you don't get what you want, you're unhappy. And the whole life is nothing but series of happinesses and unhappinesses in terms of what you want, what you get. This is a karmi. This is the definition of a karmi. As you turn into a trustee, because to become a trustee also requires certain backgrounds. It means that out of all the people that the owner knew, he could probably pick out certain people who think the right way, who are honest, who are trustworthy, who are responsible, and you assign them the trustee's role. And the trustee's role is to begin to become a karma yogi. How? As we will discuss this in more detail later on, this is a very major topic of what is karma yoga is and how does it help me in my life. All of that we will discuss. But just in in this small context, we're seeing is that the trustee starts to become a karma yogi. In what sense? It is less disappointed if you do not get the results. He says that, you know what, I trust the owner. He'll give me rewards sooner or later, it doesn't matter. The important is that the business runs. And I subserve my own interest in getting things done. This is the element of the karma yoga. Okay, so this is not a complete explanation that we will do as we proceed along later on, but for now, you get the feeling that the attitude, you see now that's another thing, very interesting thing. Our acharyas have all pointed out, Swami Dayanand used to say that really karma yoga is all about attitude. There's no physical thing as such. It's all about attitude. And a lot of the instructions in Vedanta. And the attitude should be, and the attitude is not not fully functional until you are given an introduction to that you already have what you want. Praptasya prapti, as we have been saying all along. It is a very important thing to keep in mind. Because the attitude would be, if you don't have it, then you are more anxious, you're more worried, you're more intolerant. But as you begin to see that really speaking, what I look for in my life is really very close to me. I don't need to to get all the results and when it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. I would rather have it, but my sense of disappointment is cushioned a little bit. It's like, I'm not hurt that much. This is what Karma Yoga is all about. And so as you become from a worker to a trustee, your sense of Karma Yoga becomes better. And in fact, now I would like to recite a very important and a very popular verse from the Bhagavad Gita. In view of what we have seen, so far, before we actually apply it towards the more details of our life, which I'll do now, I want to recite this one verse, which is from chapter 2, verse number 47. It says, you may have heard of it already, Karmani eva adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phala hetuhu bhu ma te sangaha astu akarmani. This is in the second chapter. This is the chapter where the entire spectrum of the teaching of the Bhagavad Gita has been summarized. As you know, we talked about it already. It's a summary chapter. Karmani eva adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. So the Ishvara is saying, so there's so much in this verse based on what we've said. One of them, the first thing is, Ishvara is the owner of the world. Why? How can you say that? Is it arbitrary? Ishvara is the one that created the world. You and I are given the roles. In fact, if you just examine it, everything was given to us. Our parents were given to us. The choice of parents was given to us. My DNA was given to us, was given to me. My health, my gender, my body, my mind, my ability to given to us. Given to us. Just like the trustee's role was given to the trustee. He didn't invent it. Our parents did not invent me. The ability to invent us was given to them. They were also invented. There's no invented other than Ishvara. The definition of an Ishvara is the one who has created this enormous world. Therefore, the owner is Ishvara. It should be very clear from this example. It doesn't mean that you and I don't play a significant role in running the world. What it means is, karmani eva adhikaraha. My focus should be in running the show. Ma phaleshu kadachana means don't worry about it. So this is very confusing to a lot of people. I've seen more discussion on this point. How can I do something without expecting result? How is that possible? Swami Dayananji used to also say that, so this is Krishna talking to Arjuna, that you should just do your action, but not worry about, not expect the results. Okay? And then Arjuna is not paying any attention. He's just loafing around doing something. This is not the case. I'm just postulating. So Krishna says, "Hey, I'm talking to you." So he says, "That means you're also expecting results. You're talking to me. How is that possible?" So this is obviously not the reason. It's not as though even Krishna expects Arjuna to be paying attention. You cannot do anything without expecting. That's not what is being talked about. What is being talked about is something we will now discuss in much more detail. And that is, and this will now, I'm just giving you this is what we're going to remember I told you about the viveka between love and affection, love and attachment. Remember that? One of the 9 vivekas. So we'll come back to that, but I'm not there yet, so let me just proceed. What this verse means and what the implication about leading our life is, there are limited emotional energies that you have. Those can be broadly classified into devotion to doing a good job, attention to making a contribution is one thing. And the other one is worrying about it. To have an anxiety about it. So Krishna is saying, will you please recognize that as a trustee or as a worker, and we'll make that distinction a little bit more clearly in our lives in a minute, but as far as you as either a trustee or as a helper, my advice to you is, given the limited emotional energy that you have, for either making a contribution or to worry about it, you let me do the worrying and you maximize the contribution. You will get much better results if that's what you want to do. That you want results. Don't waste time in worrying about it. Why should I not worry about it? Because I am the owner, don't you understand? I'm the one that created everything. And the best thing is for you to do what you are supposed to do, which is to be happy doing what you're doing. Enjoy the process. Don't wait for the results. Don't be miserable. It may never come. Why would it never come? Because I am not a wall. I am a conscious entity that has to evaluate a lot of things. Like Swami Maheshanji was giving this example. He was saying that, so supposing this business owner, he has told these people, okay, on Diwali time, you have to work until 9 o'clock at night time because there's so much business to be done. I would appreciate if you can do that. And the guy does it for several days. The worker goes away. He doesn't really do anything. And the trustee, even though he's a senior officer, he's the one who actually has to uncrate things and so on and so forth. But he says that's fine, no problems. What happens is, at the end of the year, he gets a big bonus. And the workers get some profit sharing like everybody does. But the trustee is given a big bonus. But the big bonus is not given at the time that he worked until 9 o'clock. You see, if it was a wall that you're throwing the ball against, you will be given instant feedback. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. But because the owner rewards thoughtfully, he knows who my real trustees are. He knows where to give the rewards, when to give the reward. Instead of just giving him a $20 bill just for completing or something, he gives him a bigger reward because he thinks about the business, not just about himself. And so one thing that, interestingly enough, about the karma phaladata and so on, is another thing that you may already know, and we will, if we'll talk about it some other time, that results are given in two ways. One is called drishtaphala and one is called adrishtaphala. You may already know this. So drishtaphala means a immediate result of something, and the adrishtaphala means stored result for the future. It's kind of like a gross result and a subtle result. And an example of this, I remember this example so well when I read this. So there was in a very crowded Indian street, where there was, as you've been to India, there's buses and there's auto rickshaws and honking and people walking and so on and so forth. And so there was this old man who was gingerly walking with a stick. And it was very muddy and so on and so forth. And then there was a bus coming from the other side. And a young man pushed him aside very suddenly, where he fell down, his clothes became completely muddy, and he probably hurt himself. And everybody said, "What the heck did you do?" He's an old man. You injured him unnecessarily. You know what he did? He saw that the bus was taking a wide turn. This man was not cognizant of it, and he would have been run over. And he saved his life. So in this, when people understood, they say, "Oh my goodness, well, we didn't realize it." Well, in this example, look at it. The drishtaphala is, the obvious result is that the person got injured. and his clothes got completely muddy, and he had to get up and so on. Adrishtaphala is, what an amazing, to save somebody's life. There cannot be a greater result for it. Now, what happens? So, what is going to happen? People, first of all, they were ready to beat this guy up because he made this old man. But at least they didn't do that. And they also said, oh, thank you, thank you. And this old man also said, oh, thank you so much, thank you so much, thank you. They keep on waiting. How many times you can say thank you, thank you, thank you? Is that enough? Is that an ample reward? Who is going to take care of that? There is a system for never forgetting. You and I may forget. We don't have enough memory to keep, it's interesting. What is it called? There is a Sanskrit word for it. That's what I want to talk about. Called, come back to me. So you know what, in Sanskrit, the words are so descriptive, so accurately describing what the function is. So beautiful, what a lovely language it is, much deeper than we can even recognize. So there is a word for debt. In English it is D-E-P-T, debt. We don't know how it came arrive and so on. In Sanskrit it's called Kritagya. Kritagya. Just temporary, I will take it. It's called this is called debt. And I won't have time and talk about this more because I have some other things I want to do. But just very briefly, the word kritagyaha means Yaha kritaha saha janati, means the knower of what has already happened, not forgetting what was done. Like for example, supposing you give someone, that's why they say that if it is better to give, somebody says, supposing somebody says, do you have $5 in you? Now you look into your wallet and you do have a $5 bill and you can give it to him. You also have a $100 bill. So you lie to him and say, no, I don't have $5, but can I give you $100? So he says, okay, that's fine. Give me $100. You know why this is a good thing to do? Because that fellow may forget to give you $5. And also it will be not very good for you to keep asking him, hey, did you give me the $5? So he says, what a small kind of $5, can't you just forgive? But if you give him $100, he is not going to forget it, and it will be not shameful for you to ask for $100. This is the meaning of Kritagya. Kritagya means one who remembers what was done. This is the definition of the word debt. When you say, I owe you something, that means I am very thankful for you, because I remember what you did for me. Ishvara never forgives or forgets a debt. He is never going to forget it. And the positive side also. So in the case of this fellow who saved the old man's life, and the old man said, thank you, and a couple of them, is that enough? Ishvara has written it down. Somewhere in the cloud business, he's got infinite cloud, that this fellow, this is what is called adrishtaphalam. So what it means is that if I don't, this is what happens, but oftentimes there is a feeling, you find that some of the crooks are enjoying life a lot. And some of the honest people are not enjoying life. The reason is that the crooks may be crooks now, but they have done a lot of good things in the past somewhere. You cannot have, there is no such, so often we say, there is no justice in this life. There is no, we find all excuses for not to recognize God. There cannot be any God. Because there's so much bad things that there is no such thing as that. It is a thoughtful, complete, and it is only a matter of drishtaphala versus adrishtaphala. Punya and papa. That's all. Anyway, so going back to this verse. So to complete it, then we'll go further. I have lots more to talk about. Is that says Ishvara, so Krishna is advising Arjuna that if I were you, recognizing me as the owner, let me worry about everything. You go home at 5 o'clock and just relax. And during the day, do not spend any time worrying about the business. You just do what you need to do and enjoy. This is my advice to you. This is exactly what he's saying. Karmani eva adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. So phaleshu here, so this is a translation from all the acharyas, not just, so on the surface it looks like don't worry about results. So no, this is not what is being talked about, that don't worry about results. It means do not worry about the results as much as possible. We will come back to it. And so the second line we will not dispense with now because it are the other things that we need to talk about. So now we should now translate everything into our lives. So let's see what it is. So we have already talked about the fact that the Ishvara is the sole creator, sole owner of the whole creation. A jiva means a person, a human being. Here means a human being. In the case of animals, this does not apply because they have to instinctively do what they need to do. They are still growing. But a human being now has an opportunity to either be a trustee or a worker. And those of us that have a circle of people that are close to me, this is acting as a trustee. What it means is, it is not necessary to worry about the rest of the people, about what happens to the world. Not necessary. If you want to do it, fine. It's not a problem. But do a good job on people that you are interacting with. Your business, your family, your friends. Make a contribution towards it. So this is the distinction between dealing with the world at large. And so one aspect of that is, first of all, you should not worry at all about anything. Have complete faith, no matter who the president is, what the situation is. Just do not worry. Okay? There is a reason why people are put into any one place. And those things are all done by Ishvara. So one thing is, see, I find this many times. I find people are very bothered that bad things are happening in the world, and they feel helpless. And they want to help in some way or the other. They want to you find this oftentimes that some of these terrorists and so on, they have families and they give up the families for joining some kind of a cause. So this is a classical case. You're worried about the larger goodness of the world, and you neglect your own family and friends in order to do that. So Krishna says not necessary. Because people say, where is God? There's so much bad things that are happening. Let him care of it. You think you're going to make a big difference? No one has that before. And this is just ego trip on your part that you're going to just go and help out. Do the best you can where you can make a difference, sure. But maximize your contribution. And in fact, I'm going to postpone the discussion for a minute when we come to the love and attachment in a minute. Anyway, I'll come to that later on. So another aspect of this is, and I think I've already pretty much covered it, that the owner has and in this case, particularly in the case of Ishvara, has total intelligence, total ownership, takes everything into account. Nothing is really left over. And in the case of the trustee, it means do a good job of what you have been entrusted with. And the entrusted, remember we talked about you are given a responsibility for a major part of the business. We saw that earlier. But this is what it is. The major part of the business is your spouse, your children, your friends, your workers, and whatever circle you think. This is the major part that you are responsible for. Do a good job of that. Be totally devoted. Don't worry about the whole world. That'll be taken care of. If you can, fine. But you don't need to. And then, even for this side, this is a very big thing, do not take ownership of them. These are not your children. Don't expect anything back from them. This is called attachment. I'm sort of going through that, but means, you know what that means? That means, if you want, we can even just go there. I'll come back to it, but give them as much love as possible. Maximum contribution and care. Minimum worry. How can I have minimum worry? Because everyone is directly responsible for the owner. Your children belong to Ishvara. You are a trustee given the responsibility for bringing them up. Give them everything that you need. But you are not the owner of your children, as an example. Let them fly away. If they need you, be there. But don't keep hounding them and saying, you did not call me. You did not do this for me. I'm getting older, you better take care of me. They may not. They may not. Don't expect it. And also do not lay awake worrying about them. While they were there with you, fine. They've gone to college, they've got a lot of other things going on. Let them go. You worry about yourself. Don't even worry about yourself. Don't worry, period. No reason for having any anxiety whatsoever. And you can only do that if you knew that the reason we have anxiety is that if I don't do it, who else will? You see, there's the problem. Somehow I've just assumed that I am responsible, I'm owner. Yes, you should certainly help them. But do it because this is a very sophisticated world with lots of implications. And just because you gave birth to the children doesn't mean you own them. No. Absolutely not. There's only one owner in this whole thing. And so the difference between love and attachment is that the contribution is compromised with the alternative emotion that there is in fact some attachment. I'm worried about it. Worrying is not love. Being attached is not love. That I'm very attached to somebody. I'm worrying about it just because, that doesn't help at all. What helps is some action. Do something. But then, when you come back, have a cup of coffee and recognize Ishvara and let him take care of things. So the distinction between love and attachment is a very big thing. It can really change our life. And it all really comes about because of my non-recognition about the ownership by Ishvara. It is just that you feel I'm on my own, I gotta help people, who else will do it? Fine, as I said, do it as much as you can. So there's a big distinction between worry and anxiety and the impetus to contribute. Contribute, sure, but leave the worrying. Na karmani eva adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. This only really comes from an understanding of the study of the scriptures and then developing, so one of the things that I think I may have mentioned it to you before also, and we talked about it in the earlier morning class also, that really speaking, there are three things that we but we should think about in terms of reforming the structure of our lives. So those three things are, and if you want I can just put it down here. So there are three factors. In You can call it making progress or whatever, just some words. So I'll put that in Sanskrit first, then I will explain it. Shruti, Yukti, and Anubhava. So they say that one should be cognizant about these three factors in our life: Shruti, Yukti, and Anubhava. So Yukti means rational thinking, means logic. Logic. So they say that pure yukti is not ultimately very useful, because our thinking is that I want to approach things in a very logical way, and I want to think clearly, and that will help me in my life. And what our scriptures say is, I'm sorry to tell you, not entirely. To this day, people have been searching for a intelligent way of analyzing life and so on and so forth. They haven't gotten anywhere. Why not? Because they're missing something. Like, for instance, I'll just give you one rather exaggerated example. People will say, those who are atheists will say, there is no God, because if the God was there, I would be able to see him. This is the logic. It's a flawed logic, but it's a logic from their standpoint. Shruti is the authoritative intelligence behind it. Now, one important thing about Vedanta and also other schools of thought that we should know, we do not say abandon yukti and only go for shruti, as many or almost most of the other schools of thought say. They say that you just believe in what we say and don't question it. We say just the opposite. We don't say don't question it, but based on my suggestions to you. You see what the interesting. So, for example, this is a good thing that we've done, is that if you recognize that the definition of who the owner is, think about it. You are acting as an owner without, it's like exactly like Swami Chinmayananda once gave this example a long time ago, that there was a guy who had gone to India for 3 months and he didn't have a garage in his house, so he asked his friend, can you please, I just bought a very expensive car and you have an extra garage, can you please keep it for me for 3 months? And also please drive it so that it is workable. So the guy says, sure. We started driving this, and it was a much better German car than the one he was used to. And he really started liking it. He got attached to it. 3 months later, this fellow comes back and he says, okay, can I have my car back? And he says, can I come and keep it for another week or two? I got this trip that I'm going to make to Los Angeles. The fellow says, I need my car back. You don't want to give it up anymore. You're acting like an owner. Exactly the same situation is there, where if my children are with me and I take them to school and I take good care of them, make meals for them and everything, until they are about college going age, and they're all mine. And they also say mom and dad, and whatever I tell them, they do it. Once they go, and this happens, by the way, in marriages also. This is exactly what happens in Indian marriages. And so the son is very devoted to the mother and so on and so forth, and always, visits and so on. Then he gets married. And his mother calls him up and he says, how are you doing? He says, I'm a little busy right now. Can I talk to you tomorrow? This, by the way, happened with my granddaughter, so I'm just telling you, this is exactly what happens. When she was about 9, she would give us hugs and so on. Just yesterday I went in there to take them to the airport. They're all going to some wedding in Los Angeles. And Arya, who is now close to 14, she was just sitting there. And her younger sister opened the door, and Arya is doing some homework. She just said, no getting up, no hugs or anything. So what happens is that the kid goes to college, and now he doesn't return phone calls. And you thought you were the owner. You get a shock of your life. You know why? It's a confirmation. You are not the owner. You do the best you can in terms of, and so on. Anyway, there's more to be said about that. I'm almost out of time. Yeah, I do want to finish this. So what it says is, by all means, use your yukti. But the yukti should be consistent with what the Shruti is saying. In fact, we have dialogues embedded in all of our teaching. Because we don't even ask the right questions. So the Shruti says, by the way, this is the question you should be asking. We're not smart enough to ask the questions. And the Shruti says, have you thought about this? You should think about it. You should think about who's the owner. You should think about what it is. And then at the end, it should jive with your own experience. It should not be totally different. In the beginning, it looks very different, but ultimately, it will be the same. So anyway, so that is the, I don't know how this topic came up, but I thought I would just talk about that. Anyway, so in terms of what I said earlier, which is that I wanted to give you a conceptual idea. When I was preparing for this class, I thought that I would just take this example, which has been very helpful to me as well. Because then a lot of what Gita talks about becomes clearer if the basic concepts are there. So I think I'm going to continue. I'm going to hunt for some more examples more concepts like this, and so that we have a backdrop, and then we will start to see references in the Gita in terms of karma yoga, and I will remind you about these concepts that we have already gone through. And so that's what I think I want to do, and I hope that's okay with you, and we will continue with that. So I'll close the class with the short prayer. Om asato ma satgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityor ma amritam gamaya. Om purnamadav purnamidam purnat purnamudachyate purnasya purnamadaya purnameva vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namah. Hari Om. Okay, I invite any questions that you have.
I have a
Yes.
question.
Yeah.
You know, like you said that your body, your mind, everything is given by Ishvara,
Correct.
right? Your parents and
Yeah.
everything is
Yeah.
given by Ishvara. But you know, in many books I read that you select your own parents, you select your own where to be born. So I'm confused
Okay.
now.
Yeah. So her question is, if you did not hear it, that I said that the choice of your everything is given to you, parents and so on. And she says that she has read some text which says that the person chooses the parents and the person chooses some other things, so she's confused about the conflict. It's a good question. So the way it is done is that it is really a partnership between Ishvara and the Jiva, in the sense that because it's a continuum, there's no beginning, there's no point where you are not a Jiva. You've always been in one form or the other. And your previous situation dictated that you will be given certain situations in your next life, based on your own ideas and so on and so forth, and your own ability, your whether you deserve it or not, just not by asking, but you have to really work for it and say, I really want this and all that. Then the choice of your next life is determined by the karma phaladata. So both are important. Both are important. So what you want, but then suppose you have had a long previous life, and so those also have to be taken into account. And so you can make a contribution in asking for what you want, but the final determination has to be done by Ishvara. So really both of them.
Now it makes
Yeah,
sense.
good.
So,
Thank
okay,
you.
I got it.
All these things are in the practice.
Praptasya prapti is a slightly different situation in the sense that ultimately the total freedom is already yours. It is already you. And so it's not as though you are going to ask for something totally different from it. That's the praptasya prapti. But the process of getting there, of recognizing that it is a praptasya prapti, does require some structure. This is the way the mind works, where you have to improve your mind. And you have to do some work also. That example I gave that I lost my credit card. I hadn't found it, even though I am now completely relaxed. Because I remember this so well when I was worried that I had lost because it was apraptasya prapti. I was really worried. I was asking my wife, hey, where did we go yesterday? And we were talking about it. Then it suddenly occurred to me, aha, yesterday I had used it in my office somewhere. So I suspended my worry, but I did not suspend my search, because it was around there somewhere. And luckily I could also tell that I had a messy desk with lots of papers and so on, and I may have put it underneath it somewhere on the desk, and that's exactly where it was. So praptasya praptihi is the overall objective, but the process of getting there may require some, like in my case also, I had to do some work, much less than what I would have done rather than getting into the car and saying, do you have my credit card? Do you have my credit card? All of that was not necessary. But something had to be done. And so part of the questions here were, what kind of parentage you had. It's very possible, quite frankly, that we may not be able to figure this out in this life. And so there my prayer should be, will you please take care of me? I'm right on the right path now. And just, I don't care how long it will take because that's not up to me. But just make sure that you do not give me wrong ideas at any one time. Keep me on the right path. And so in that sense, the choice of configurations, parents, all of that is relevant in that manner. Yeah. Yeah.
So when we are talking about the karma yoga, you said about attitude.
Yeah.
Is the cushion of how we take the sense of disappointment.
Correct.
So is it comparable to ego?
So the word ego is an interesting one. The word ego has two meanings. One is, as we normally say, an excessive idea about myself, beyond what I deserve. See, everybody has some individuality. But if someone has an excessive amount of an appreciation about oneself, then manifests as an ego. That person has a very big ego. You know, nothing seems to satisfy him and so on and so forth. This is one part. But then, since suppose you don't, if someone doesn't have that, you're a normal person and so on, that normal person also has a wrong ego. So this is ego. The word ego is at two levels. One is the excessiveness, and the other one is even at a basic level it is wrong. For the basic level, I need to understand what the truth is. So we talked about this dream character, you remember. So the dream character who's dreaming is also an ego. It's a wrong ego. And so for that ego to go, some lot of understanding has to be given. So the disappearance of ego is done in two stages. I'm just giving you a simplified answer. One is, even from a transactional standpoint, it stands out as a wrong thing to do. But even after that is done, even in a non-transactional way, my life is not finished because I have an attachment to me as a person. Even that has to be understood as being harmful. And then you really discover something even more than that. That requires some scriptural teaching. So in that sense, yeah. Yeah.
On these three factors, where does the Shakti go? There's a Yukti.
So the Shakti is, of course, a different phenomena. Shakti means an ability or a power, right? So that's a different thing. So the Shakti can be there in all three of them. Your ability to follow the Shruti, your ability, Shakti to do Yukti, Shakti to do Anubhava, all three of them. So it's a different dimension altogether. Yeah. Yes?
When you spoke about the throwing a rubber ball against the wall, and that Ishvara is not the wall.
Correct.
Okay, is the wall something, some aspect of life?
Yes, of course it is, because the wall is part of the inert creation, which is part. So, for example, if everything is made non-inert, it'll be a very strange creation. Like, for example, if I'm sitting on this chair and the chair says, "You haven't paid me anything today. You've been sitting on me, and that's $5, please." Then I have a different set of issues. I can't do anything. So the creation is a mixture of inert and non-inert. Yeah.
Vijay, there's a question here.
Yeah.
From a viewer. Where can we find Mahesharananda's literature?
Mahesharanji's text. So let this person send me an email, and I will tell them about the complete library of books and where they can get it, yes. Wonderful. It's available, it's all from Varanasi, huge publication, huge number of books and so on, yeah. All right, if no other questions, thank you, we'll see you next week.